What goes on mentally when you're facing adversity? Have you found yourself in a really tough place in life where you think, gosh, I wish I had somebody in my corner right now, somebody that could help me get clarity on what that best next step forward could be? And then guess what? Out of nowhere, a high school basketball coach has the answer. Well, I'll tell you what, you're in for a real treat today. Our guest today has a history of achievement, milestone after milestone after milestone, and she's used her incredible platform as the head coach for the Michigan State Spartan women's basketball team to inspire, empower, and develop young ladies all across the country to win, and not just win, but to win big and overcome the challenges of life. Welcome to At the Podium. Hello again, and welcome to At the Podium. I'm Manuel, Amezcua, a financial advocate to my clients, CEO to our firm, husband, father, and a massive sports fan. I'm obsessed with encouraging people to dream big and attack the unique vision that they have for their life. And we like to host people on the show that through sharing their story, there's lesson after lesson after lesson that will inspire you to do the same. You're in for a treat today. I'm incredibly excited to welcome Suzy Merchant, the head women's basketball coach at Michigan State. And look, it's going to be an incredible story of achievement and accomplishments. We're going to hear about her core values that she shares with everyone that comes across her path. And what I love most is that it's not just been at Michigan State. Suzy has poured her heart into so many different teams, from Oakland to Saginaw Valley State to Eastern Michigan. The last 15 years at Michigan State, she is the fastest coach to get to 100 wins in any sport at MSU, over 500 total career wins, 300 at MSU. And look, I love the fact that she has record after record after record still at Central Michigan, where she was a hardcore Chippewa and one of the top talents that came out of that school. Today, Suzy's going to just share such an inspiring message about her life, about her passion for pouring into others, and sharing a couple really unique moments along the way. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Suzy Merchant. I am so fired up to be at the Breslin Center this morning. I can't believe it. So people, they tease about all these, D'Antonio football players that I have on the podcast. And today, I'm with Central Michigan's Chippewa, all-time career assist leader, single season career assist leader, and single game tied for assist leader, head coach of the Michigan State Spartans women's basketball program, Suzy Merchant.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You're going back to the vault with those statistics. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, but Suzy, it's like, you have had since your days at Central Michigan, and we're going to unpack all of this. But you've been associated with so many different incredible basketball teams, including Olympic teams.
Yep.
And what a special story that we get to unpack today. And I'm so excited and thankful that you were willing for us to get together.
Oh, I appreciate it. I think it's crazy where that little round ball has taken me, that's for sure. And many people in their journeys, sport is usually, and especially if you make a career out of it, you really do enrich your life in different ways that you didn't know even possible.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. So thanks so much. And, I do want to acknowledge this really quick. somebody made this ball for you, right? Because this is the most unique basketball I've seen, and I think maybe we can give that person credit.
Yeah, Kiara Copeland, our graduate assistant. I mean, it took her hours and hours. I think she said every panel was like an hour. And we use it as a prop in a lot of our photo shoots with recruits. I mean, it's like the favorite thing. And I'm a bling girl. I loved your gold microphone at first. I was like, oh, that's lovely. And then here we are with silver bling. So it's just, a contrast, I guess, at this point. But shout out to her. I mean, it's been everybody's favorite.
You know what I think, Alex, instead of worrying about these unique gifts we try to send our guests afterwards, we should create like a mini replica, because it's like the 10th guest that says, I like the microphone.
Yeah, these
and that
are
should
awesome.
be like our thank you with the date for being on the show.
Yeah. That'd be a nice little
right?
gift. Yeah.
Thanks for saying that, Coach. And you know what? Look, I love to go back in time and think about where the vision for such a special story and a special life began. You said it was okay to go back to your childhood. Traverse City.
Yep.
Traverse City,
Michigan.
3-sport athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just curious. Like, I want to hear about your parents. I want to hear about your childhood. I want to hear how you narrowed it down to one sport when you were a standout in all three.
Yeah.
Basketball, volleyball, and
softball. Yeah. I would throw football in there until I got noticed that, because I really did look like a boy most of my life. So I played football for a long time, kind of filling in as my older brother until, somebody figured out that I wasn't Mike. I was me, and I was the girl. So yeah, I played a lot. I was a gymnast when I was younger too. I was very involved in gymnastics at first, from the time I was little, and made a transition into other sports. That was a big decision, probably a pretty defining moment in my life looking back at it.
When you do think about that, so it sounds like from the day you were born, you were into sports. Where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I've always had a competitive drive. Like my mom tells me this story in Traverse City. They have the Cherry Festival up there.
Yes.
And when I was like 4.5, 5 years old, they had the big wheel contest. Remember those big wheels, And I was the only girl out there, and I smoked everybody. And she was like so proud, and I was the only girl, And I didn't know any better. And I grew up with 2 brothers, right, and a dad that played college sports. So I kind of always compared myself, or felt like anything boys can do, I can do as well or better. And so I've always been driven that way, I think. So when I look at my life, I think there's been some defining moments. Growing up in Traverse City was a big part of that. I mean, back then it's a little smaller than it is. Wasn't a food wine place,
Mm-hmm.
It was a small town, and they embraced athletics and youth sports for sure.
I want to give a special shout out to my friend Dana Cornelius. Dana's the CEO, co-owner of Sport of Kings, the gear that I am rocking today. Yes, folks, I do wear more than a blue suit, white shirt, and a tie. Check out their website, sokfy.com. If you drop in the word Podium in the discount code, they're going to send you an amazing, amazing, amazing package of whatever you order with 20% off. Check it out, Sport of Kings. Love Dana and Tiffany. When I've listened to, and I spent some time this weekend listening to previous interviews, comments that I could find online from past players of yours at various programs, not just Michigan State, they say a lot of really special, really unicorn, really meaningful comments about the impact and influence you've had on them outside of just basketball. When you look back at your childhood, can you think of a coach that just really stands out that you still think of often that had that type of impact on you?
My high school coach, for sure. I mean,
which sport?
Basketball.
Okay.
But so in Traverse City, he really did it the right way. It was kind of old school back then. I mean, he had a youth program. I could take a charge on the backside of a shell drill when I was in 4th grade, and he would dress up as Devil Defensky, like the devil, and he'd have a cape, and he just got you to buy into the defensive side of the ball. Just so many of my fundamentals, both sides of the ball, but certainly the influence he had. And I can remember, he made a comment to me when I was in 8th grade. He was talking about, making varsity and things like that for the next year. And that was kind of my goal, I had decided to kind of move away from the gymnastics route, because I was at the point in gymnastics where you have to move away and train, right? Like it's the only thing you can do. You can't play any other sports. And I was such a tomboy growing up that I loved every sport, but it got to that point where it was getting serious and I had to make a decision. And I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to, find other things that I could do. And I loved basketball, football, baseball. I mean, we were, kicking the can, playing all that stuff, out in the neighborhood, pickup games. So he was very inspirational. And I always wanted to play for him. He built a program when I was in fourth grade. I mean, he was like everything. And then he kind of became a second father to me. And, just really always talked about not just basketball, but like my impact as a person. And I didn't see it. I was 15, 16 years old. I mean, we're just kind of, a little bit unsure of who we are. And he always helped define who that was for me. He always talk about like my smile and how I give to people and how I can elevate other people's games. And I didn't even see that, and so he was one of the first people that really saw the talent in me, and not only as a basketball player, but as a person too.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing the examples of how he invested into your confidence and your self-awareness of all you could do, right?
Yeah, he always pushed you, and he did, but he did it in a way that I think he lifted people up. I mean, he was hard on me now, don't get me wrong. I mean, there was expectations. I mean, you're the point guard as a young kid on a high level team, and we were making state runs and stuff. We were ranked, and there's a lot of pressure on that. So, I mean, he didn't sugarcoat a whole lot. He gave it to me straight, but he also, off the court tried to explain to me how, when you lead, I say this to my players all the time, especially point guards, you lead by the position you play or the personality you have. And sometimes it's both. And when it's both, it's God's greatest gift. And you don't take it for granted, and you have the responsibility to use it. And so he kind of was the first one that taught me that. And I look back on just my personality and how I could affect people and teams when I played sports, So I think he was always, you play the point, you got to lead. Don't be the quarterback if you're scared to say something. Like, you can't be a mute and be a QB. You can't be QB1 and not have an influence on your team. And I feel that way about PGs too. And so I was a point guard, and he kind of said, you lead by personality or position, and sometimes both, and you have both. And so I feel like I look for that in point guards if I can find it.
Yeah, I love hearing you say that story. And our very own Alex Vernon, who previously was Alex Joint, point guard in Saginaw, state championship, state of Michigan. And I think of like a brief conversation I had with her dad one time, and how he just spoke about how proud he was of her, doing that in high school. And so you hear that, right? Like, you are the commander in charge on the court.
Yeah. You have to have a commanding presence. But I also think you have to, another phase to this, and you probably went through some of this too, is like, on the women's side in particular, less on the men's side. This is a little gender conversation, but you got to know your people. Like, that's the number one rule in leadership, period. So how you as a PG, how I talk to you is going to be a lot different than how I talk to the 5-man, and how I'm going to talk to a veteran versus how I'm going to talk to a freshman. So like, knowing their language. I mean, there's a time and a place to get into people, and there's a time and a place to pat them on the back, and you got to have emotional intelligence about you. I mean, you talked about Mateen a little bit earlier. I think Mateen's greatest gift wasn't the talent on the court. He has tremendous emotional intelligence. The man can read a room. He can inspire people.
Yes, he can.
And he can have tough conversations, but people respect him because he's learned what language to speak to them over the time that he was here, and how to get the best out of people as a point guard. And that's what I respect out of him the most. I mean, everyone talks about him as a player, but you got to understand his impact as a human, and how his emotional intelligence really changed the game here at Michigan State.
And you've seen, I'm sure, like with some of your players as well, you've seen Mateen apply that forward into the corporate boardroom in the business world.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been incredible, right? What he and Matt Ishbia have built at UWM, and, him being one of Matt's lieutenants. I mean, it's no surprise that Matt came back and said, Mateen, join me on this journey.
Yeah. I mean, Mateen, even the things that he's doing now with some of his social media, it's inspiring, Yes. I mean, he's really got good energy, but at the same time, he's got wisdom. And And again, I just go back to emotional intelligence of it all. Like, you got to know your people. And I think he's a good reader of people, and it translates in the business world. That always translates.
With all the success you had coming out of Traverse City, and I'm a big Chippewa advocate, right? I love Chris Fowler. I
Yep.
mean, he is literally
Yep.
one of my favorite humans on planet Earth.
Yep.
His brother Benny too, though. And what brought you to Central Michigan coming out of Traverse City? Can you think back to the moment when you made that decision and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think, truthfully, on the women's side, Central Michigan was a really, like, one of the best programs in the state at the
Absolutely.
time. I mean, it really was. I mean, I really wanted to be a Spartan. I had both my brothers went here, and we used to, when I was a kid, come down here and watch Scott Skiles play. That's how old I am. That was our family vacation. We couldn't afford a whole lot, so that was it.
Love Scott Skiles.
Yeah, we used to come down here and watch him play, like, once a year, and that was
Oh my
kind of a
God,
big
he's so
deal.
special.
So I always had a dream to play here. But at the same time, Central Michigan was really, really, really powerful, especially on the court, but also up north, like where I'm from. There's a lot of Chippewas. And at that time, Dan Marley from my hometown, he was an Olympian, an NBA player. He obviously went on. He went to Central Michigan. And a couple of the girls that I played with went there. And so it just felt like home. I feel like Central Michigan is a mini Michigan State in terms of like the campus, the atmosphere, the pride of the programs.
Sure.
It felt like home to me. And, I had opportunity. I mean, Ohio State had recruited me, some other bigger schools, but nothing felt more right than being a Chippewa. And so that's, you always go with your gut, right? You always go with your gut.
4-year starter, 3-year captain, career assist record holder, single season assist record holder, tied for first in single game assists. What didn't you achieve during those 4 years at Central Michigan that you still think about?
Some of those games that we lost, like in the MAC tournament, like to go on to the NCAA tournament, we were a one bid league, so you had to win it. I mean, there was no, now it's a little different, but we never could get over that hump. We lost to Bowling Green in the finals, and it just was such a battle. We just couldn't get over it, go over that hump. And so I look back and think about that. But I say this all the time. We got to win. I mean, this isn't Sunday afternoon church league, what I do. I recognize I'm getting paid to win games. Everybody expects me to win games. But I also think like the relationships and the journey along the way is embracing that, loving that, loving the sisterhood of who's around you, who your teammates are. And I always say this about Michigan State. I think Michigan State, as I said, reminds me of a Central Michigan, but you can we have incredible facilities. Those are
Incredible.
just incredible, but that's bricks and mortar, and everybody thinks that's all it takes. And it isn't. It's also about the people in your journey. They matter more than a facility, right? Because I mean, we haven't always had the best of facilities. I mean, we haven't, but we found ways because of the people in the journey. The Tom Izzos of the world, the camaraderie here. It's power. It's big time Power 5 BCS sports, but it's a bunch of Division II people, in terms of mentality. Like, I mean, how we connect. My first head job, I was the academic advisor, the senior women's administrator, the compliance coordinator, and the basketball coach.
That's right.
I
They
mean,
had to
4
piece all
jobs.
that together just to get you there.
Yeah, and those were 4 full-time jobs. And I can remember, this goes to the journey thing, I called the compliance person at Central Michigan. I called her over and I said, I need some help. We had to perform these squad lists and the NCAA stuff. And I'll never forget the next day, Judy Van Horn, bless her heart, she sent me a bouquet of flowers and a note. It was like, bless your heart, because she does it for a full-time job. And here I am, the head basketball. And I was getting my master's degree at the time, full-time master's degree. So, and I didn't even have a full-time assistant. I had a part-time assistant. So I look back and I'm like, how did I do that? But you just do, you just want to win and you do what it takes, and whatever's in front of you, you just kind of put your head down and go to work.
Who do you think had the biggest impact on that mindset? I've actually heard that about you from someone else. just doing whatever it takes. Like you just do it.
Yeah.
Who do you think had that biggest impact on you?
My parents probably, for sure. I mean, I think that's usually your earlier influences. I look at that. I think my dad in particular played college sports. So, and then he was a principal and so you're just a master of everything when you're a principal. You're everybody's, like the buck stops there and everybody comes to you. So he's kind of like a head coach.
Yes.
And I think my mom too, my mom sacrificed a lot for us kids to kind of be where we're at. She had an opportunity to complete her college degree and then just didn't, to kind of raise us and really make sure she was at everything. I mean, she was the ultimate mom, like the ultimate mom, but also gave it to you straight too. I think sometimes that's what's missing a little bit. Our society's gotten a little soft in terms of that mentality. Like I just, even my boys, I made a list of chores, the other day, and yesterday when I came to work for 10 hours on a Sunday, and I came home and like 2 of the 6 were done.
Who?
I'm like, wow.
Tyler and Brady. You gotta step it up, buddies.
Yeah. I mean, come on, man. I mean, I try to make it fun too. I did a 2022 with the first pick in the 2022 chore draft. I actually did a chore draft. Goes to Ty Rakin. What are you picking? He's like, I'll take the garbage out. I'm like, well, all right, Brady, the second pick of the 2022 chore draft. I tried to make it fun, but they didn't seem like it was too fun. Yeah. So I was kind of annoyed when I got home at 10:30 last night. I was like, we got 2? 2 is all we got? 2 out of 6? That's not a good record. That's not what, we're not going for that. Yeah. So, but I think they instilled the work ethic piece, and I think that's the thing, and then I think when you grow up in the profession the way I did, small time assistant coach in Division II head coach, mid-major, and then here now Power 5. I didn't have people. Mm-hmm. There was no people. I was the people. Mm-hmm. So it was like if something had to get done, you just did it. Like when I was at Saginaw Valley, we were dressing in a public locker room. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy, but I need a team room. Well, there was no space. So I asked for the janitor's closet. And I painted it, carpeted it, hung up like a whiteboard. And I mean, let me tell you, I hung signs in the back. I mean, we were packed in there at halftime like sardines. I mean, there was like 15 girls and we couldn't even move in this closet, but it was our space. And I felt like it was important. So I don't need anyone to help me. Just give me the space and I'll do it. And I bought the carpet. I brought it in. I laid the carpet. I painted the walls. I mean, it needed to be done. And I wanted a space for my team. So that's just what you did.
And I bet it was celebrated by the team.
Yeah, they loved it. I mean, it got a little toasty in there at halftime. It was kind of a small space, and it did get a little bit warm. But, I had film up in the corner. I had like one of those TVs you mounted the old school and the VCR so we could watch film in there. I mean, their heads were a little bit more like this than like this because the room was so small to watch the TV. But I was like, you know what? We got to... I want them to feel like this is us. This is our team. You're important and you matter. And so... I wasn't going to wait for some physical plant guy to come over and do it. I'm like, I'm just doing it. Like, here we go. Paint the walls, lay the carpet. Let's go.
You went from playing at Central Michigan. You go directly to the assistant coach position at Oakland. What got you to Saginaw? What do you think was the moment or the achievement that occurred at Oakland that Saginaw Valley State said, hey, we need to go get Suzy Merchant?
Well, let me just backtrack a little bit.
Please.
I didn't go straight from college to Oakland. It might look like that a little bit on paper, but I actually graduated in December, right? You had that that semester where you have to do like an internship. Mm-hmm. So I actually moved to Florida. And I was just kind of sick of basketball, to be honest. I was sick of it. And so I just went down there in the Panhandle, and my grandparents had a condo down there for the first 3 months. And I waited tables. I went to the beach. I mean, I had fun, and enjoyed myself. And then my grandparents left. And I was like, well, I don't have a place to stay. So I actually lived in my car because I'm too proud to ask my parents for anything. So I lived in my car for just over a month. But it was the place I worked at was a golf course. And it was, they had locker rooms. So
This is recording, right? I just want to make sure we're capturing.
Don't tell my parents this. They'll probably die if they knew I lived I was literally, I guess in some way homeless, but I didn't feel that way. Yes. I had a job. There was a shower and I could change. So, at the golf course. So I was like, this is working out. I I could sleep right here if I had to. You're an
too.
athlete. You just know how
Me
to
too.
sleep, right?
Yes.
So it didn't bother me any. And so for a month or so, I was doing that. And then actually, my high school coach called me. And he's like, Suzy, there's an assistant coaching job open at Oakland. I think you'd be really good at it. And I was like, looking around, I'm like, well, I'm living in my car and I'm waiting tables. So, maybe I should just go do that, come back home. I'll do this job until I can figure out what it is I want to do with my life. And here I am 28 years later.
Wait.
Crazy.
Wait, you are the first coach I've sat with who, well, first of all, that was living in their car.
True story.
But secondly, that didn't necessarily have this like clear intentional vision for becoming one of the top Division I basketball coaches in the history of women's basketball.
I did not. In fact, when I was in college, everyone's like, Merchant, you should go be a college coach. I'm like, I will never. There's no way I'm ever doing that. And here I am, But this is the advice. That's why I give the advice to my girls. Like when they leave here, they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, there's no perfect job. Take the next job that comes your way. You learn from it. You stay a couple years. If you don't like it, move on. And really, that's kind of what I thought was going to happen to me. And when I got in the job, there was two things. One thing I knew I would love, and that's competitiveness and the game.
Mm-hmm.
So that always fit me. The second thing that shocked me, that's kind of made me fall in love with it, that made me decide that this is for me and this is the aha moment for me, was the mentoring and the connection to the players. It caught me off guard how much the young girls would come in my office and sit and talk about their problems and how much they needed guidance and off the court, not just basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the two things as an assistant that kind of got me. And then truthfully, as I fast forward it, I was there for 3 seasons. And Greg Campy, who's still the men's coach at Oakland to this day, is the one that said, Suzy, you should apply for the Saginaw Valley job. It's open. And I was 25. And I was like, I really got this first job because of my high school coach and a connection he had. So this would be a really good experience for me just to go interview, because I'm like, there's no way I'm getting that job. I was like, I'm just going to go there and just, I'll have the committee. I mean, there's a lot of stress when you've never done that before. I mean, I was waiting tables and I got a job because of a connection. So I'm like, this will be a good professional development. And they gave me the job. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? They actually gave me this job. But I wouldn't be where I'm at without Greg Campy at Oakland encouraging me to do it, for sure.
I know that we've met a few times over the last 5 years since I moved to Michigan, but we've never discussed the topic of mentors versus advocates.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that there's a distinct difference in my life from playing at a very small Division III school, but always like dreaming that I wanted to play in the NFL someday. And obviously not doing that.
Right.
My other dream was that I was going to become Batman. Never became Bruce Wayne. But then I would become a business owner. And so here we are trying to make a run at being a business owner. I have thought about how the greatest mentors in my life have done a good job of providing, I think, instruction, while advocates have actually opened doors and created wins for me in my life because of how much they believed in me. So Devil Defensky calls you and says,
hey, take this job.
Take this job.
Just come back
what
home.
An advocate.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like.
It wasn't for the money. I think I would made $12,000 a year, but I made $3,000 extra dollars to run the entire Gus Macker tournament at Oakland University. So I was a 15th. I mean, I could tell you that. I remember moving in my first apartment. And I was, I'm from Traverse City, so I can't just go. A lot of my friends went home in the Metro Detroit and got jobs. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I'm
4 hours.
My car's probably not ideal. So I got a really cheap apartment in Pontiac, and I thought it was great. And then my best friend from college, her dad's a cop, and he's like, Suzy, you can't live there. That's where all the drug dealers and prostitutes live. And I'm like, oh, well, it seemed nice when the Traverse City and me. I'm like, well, I'll just lock my door, I guess. But, sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag until you could get enough money to, buy a bed. Really, honestly, that's Cruz and Mears down there. I don't know if you remember Cruz and Mears, but Cruz and Mears was a restaurant And for $1.50, you could get those 2 really long, yummy loaf breads like that they make, like in Italian restaurants.
Yes.
For $1.50, and I'll buy a can of Prego and a Diet Coke, and I would live off that for like a week. I mean, it was, but you look back and now I'm like, where's the butter for my crab sauce or whatever, I've upgraded. Where's my, I don't get Marriott points for this. This is terrible. While I've been living, in a car and sleeping in a sleeping bag,
It likely makes you appreciate those moments so much more, right?
Yeah, but like you said, advocates and mentors. I mean, we all have them. And
yes.
I mean, I've been blessed to have many of them. Greg was one of them. There's no question. And actually, ironically, Pat Summitt, who this is an interesting story. You'll appreciate this. So when I was at Oakland, one of the other things that we did, we had a coaching clinic at Oakland, and I was kind of in charge of running it, details and stuff. And we invited Pat Summitt and Don Meyer. Don Meyer was a legendary coach, if you know basketball, kind of smaller college, but really, really shared his stuff. He was kind of the first one that opened the door for coaches sharing, right? So it's the Don Meyer, Pat Summitt coaching clinic. And so I go pick up Coach Summitt at the airport, bring her in. I'm doing everything. I hardly talked to her because I was just so nervous, My boss was in there with me, so I was like,
yes,
not the person. I was the JV team. So he was varsity, so I just kind of let that happen. And then I, do my job, and it's a long couple days, but it's great. We're getting ready to leave, and that's when that Saginaw job had come open. And I didn't have enough guts. I would never say anything to Pat Summitt about, hey, would you make a call for me? I didn't even know she knew who I was. So my boss at the time, Bob Taylor, says, he just didn't have any shame at all. And I appreciate this about him when it came to this, because he said to her, hey, Suzy's applying for the Saginaw Valley Division II job. She probably didn't even know where Saginaw Valley was. She's a head coach at Tennessee. And she gets out, remember our Franklin planners back then? And
yes.
She writes it down. And sure enough, she had made a phone call on my behalf to the athletic director. And that AD said something to me. He's like, when Pat Summitt called, he goes, first of all, we felt good about you anyway. Yeah. But then when she called, and her whole thing kind of changed my perspective too, of like how powerful a mentor or an advocate can be for you, and how when you sit in a chair that has influence and you feel good about somebody, it is an obligation, a responsibility, I think, to give back to the people around you. And so I learned that from someone who barely knew me, and I never really had a relationship with her.
Yes.
I mean, except for like we're all just, rock star when she walks in. So I look back at that moment and I think, she was a big reason why I sit here today, and she probably had no idea. I've shared that story with her on the road a couple times before she passed. But she's done that for millions of people, I'm sure. I mean, seriously, I'm sure she's impacted so many people. And, as she passed away in that horrible disease of, early onset dementia, the worst part of it all for me, who really didn't even know her, was that she's not going to know. Like kind of an evil twist of all the people, of all the women that have helped other women. There's going to come a point where this progresses and she will never know that. And that was like as a person who was one of those people,
right?
A mentor and advocate, and changed my life. She would never, eventually she was never going to know that. So it was a pretty powerful kind of circle of events, like when you kind of think back to some, where you're at and why you got there and the people that got you there. The people in your journey. I say that all the time. It's about the people in your journey.
That's right.
It's not about the stuff. It's about the people.
Although that is cool stuff.
Yeah. And although this is cool stuff.
10 years at Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
And then the last 15 here at Michigan State.
Yep.
It was a good run at Eastern Michigan.
It was.
And please, we'll talk about that before we get into Michigan State.
Now that's another, I got a lot of interesting stories about jobs, right? So I was head coach at Saginaw at the time, and Eastern Michigan comes open, and they had like 14 years of losing seasons. And it was not only losing seasons, they were coach killer jobs. That's kind of what we call them. Like, don't take that job that's going to kill your career, So I talk to everyone. Everybody's like, I mean, all my mentors, advocates, don't take it, Merchant. It's terrible. Don't take it. It's terrible. It's terrible. You won't win there. And I call one other person at the time. His name's Gary Waters. He was an assistant at Eastern Michigan. He was a head coach at Kent State, took him to the Elite Eight. He went to Rutgers, Cleveland State. He really, I knew him because I dated his son in college, to be honest. I mean, that's what it is. I dated his son, Sean. He was a point guard on the men's team when I was a point guard on the women's team, so I knew their family. And when he was at Eastern Michigan as an assistant coach, that's when they were in Sweet 16s.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like back to back. They had Earl Boykins. They had the Thomas twins. They were rolling. They had Grant Long. They were good. So they were going to Sweet 16s. And I was like, again, go back to my childhood. Well, anything boys can do, girls can do as well.
That's right.
So I called Gary Waters and I'm like, what do you think about this job? You know, everybody's telling me not to take it. Everybody. I mean, Greg Campy told me not to take it. The, Central Michigan people I knew told me not to. Don't take it. Don't take it. Don't take it. And Gary Waters says, you can win there, Suzy. You can win there. You can do it. And he's like, I believe you can. You got to get the right person. You're the right person for the job. And at the time, they were redoing their field house and they were building that new convocation center. So it was also a good time just from that perspective. The excitement of it.
Yes.
So I took the job and then we ended up winning a couple titles and postseasons.
Yes.
And we went from like worst to first. I mean, it wasn't overnight. It took me like 5 years to build and, get recruiting, and we got better every year. Had some really good kids, really good players. And, that I learned a lot about myself then too. That's a different level.
Yes.
I mean, you're leveling up. Every job I've had to level up.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I'm grateful because I think these jobs are really hard if you're only been an assistant coach. If you've never been a head coach and then you go to a Power 5, I think you're drinking out of a fire hose that you'll drown.
Yep.
I just think you'll drown. I made more mistakes than I did right, I'm sure. But I had Saginaw Valley and Eastern Michigan at the time, which you're looking at 12 years of head coaching experience. Yeah. And I was 35 years old, 36 years old when I got the job here. I think I was 36. Yeah. So I look at it where I'm grateful that I got lucky along the way and I've been able to stay in my state. That's pretty unusual for a career to be, Oakland, Saginaw Valley, Eastern Michigan, Michigan State. I mean, a lot of coaches have to go somewhere else to come back or be a big-time assistant or be a head coach somewhere else and come back. But I am grateful that I had head coaching experience because I knew how to do that part, right? I could recruit and I could coach. I knew that about me. So, there's a lot of stuff going on as a college coach. But if you can't do those two things, or if those two things don't align, or they don't get waylaid by all the other things that don't matter. There's so many distractions and things that go on, and you can fight a lot of battles and lose the war. And so for me, I just really tried to focus, okay, can I recruit at this school and can I win in this league? And those were the two things that kind of you boil it down to. For sure.
Yeah, I think in people listen to and watch this podcast across the country because of the relationships that we're blessed to have. I could see some East Coasters, some Texans, some West Coasters thinking how the hell is she such a killer recruiter in the state of Michigan, right? Being a Michigander, I'm not confused about it. But what would you say to the next Suzy Merchant that's trying to find her or his way in powerful Division I sports? What does it take to win the war for talent today?
Yeah. That's a very complicated question, and it's very different from when I started to what it is now. And I think that the portal changes the game, the NIL changes the game. But I think that the one thing that I would say is you have to be genuine and authentic in who you are, and you have to know who that is. I can't be Pat Summitt. I can't be Tom Izzo. I can't, you have to know yourself and have enough confidence in yourself that in today's world, I think young people can smell a fake like that, like an imposter, a poser. They're not genuine. They're not real. They're not authentic. And so my advice to whoever I'm keeping the seat warm for the next round. It's
That's
coaching.
right.
I get it. I want it to be better for the next generation. So my thing is always be authentic and genuine and true to who you are. Don't try to be something that you're not. And then know what your core values are. Like I have 3 things that matter to me the most in recruiting.
Please share those.
Okay. Outside, obviously, points, rebounds, talent. Everybody
Yes.
gets that.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. Okay, now what's the X factor that helps you win at the next level? Work ethic. If you are not a worker, if you're not willing to get in the gym and continually work, which is a little scary because of all the, sometimes now we play more games than we do work on our shot and our game, right? Like in our craft. So I think making sure individually that they have a strong work ethic, that matters to me, because you don't want them to get here and think they made it and now they're done. You want kids always striving to be a little bit better. Character matters to me. You're one bad recruit away from losing your job. I'm not here to chase them around and babysit them. I don't want to wonder if they're at class. I don't want to wonder if they're doing, like, I really want good character kids that are going to know what our standards are and make sure they understand that. So the work ethic, the character, and the last thing for me, passion. You have to be passionate about what you do, or why would you do it? If you don't really love it, that's fine, but don't do it then. It's like, do you like it? Do you love it? Or do you live it? And I look for people that live it. The most successful teams I had more kids on that team that lived it, everything they thought about was this sport, winning at a high level, them achieving at a high level, and so there's a big difference between like it, love it, live it. And so trying to get more people that live it and love it than like it. And in the recruiting process, spending time doing that. So the work ethic, the character, and the passion are the 3 X factors. And we do some things to kind of test kids a little bit in those areas. A little harder now. You only get so many times you can be with a kid, and so many times you can talk to them and things like that. But when I was at Saginaw and at Eastern, I used to do this character test. A little harder now because of the television thing. People know who you are. But I used to I would pick one game that I would go to where I knew for sure it was going to be a blowout of the kid I was recruiting. And I wouldn't wear any Saginaw Valley, Eastern Michigan, Michigan State gear. I wouldn't tell anyone I was coming. And I would sneak in the stands, and all I did was watch the kid interact. So for me, because I knew the blowout, I knew at that time the blowout was going to be, that kid you're not going to play your star player 4 quarters every minute. I want to see, where do they sit on the bench? Do they cheer for their teammates? How do they interact with their coach? How serious do they take warm-ups? I actually even wait and watch them come out of the locker room. How do they interact with their family? Because we're about to be a family if they come here. And so I remember there was a big-time kid when I first got the job here. She was a big-time recruit in our state, and I was like, I did the character test, and I didn't like what I saw, and I remember calling back to my assistant, and I was like, we might get crucified. I'm first year Michigan State, but we can't recruit this kid. I can't have this kid. I can't have her. I can't coach a kid like that. I just watched the way she treated her family, who, big family, sacrificed a lot for her to play AAU and get seen on the circuit. A lot of money goes into that. They don't have a lot of that.
Yeah.
And the way she treated, like, her parents, I just was like, no, can't do. Like, I cannot do it. And if I lose my job over it, well, at least I'm going to stand for something, because I'm not going to coach that. And it really worked out. The kid never really played. She bounced around. She was hurt. She actually got into coaching, and I think she got fired from her first job, to be honest. Yeah. So I'm not surprised, I guess, but I look back at those character tests. It's a little harder to do now, just with social media. Everybody kind of knows who you are, especially in the state. But it was something that I take very seriously. So we have to do it maybe different ways now. But those are the 3 standards. I mean, you got to be a worker if you come here, that blue collar, tough. You're going, you're good now, but to be great, we're going to keep working the character piece. And then, do you love this game, or do you live this game? Because if you don't, why do it? I mean, anything you do in life, if you're not passionate about it,
why do it?
It drives me crazy when you have people and you walk in and they're just like Debbie Downers or negative Nancy's, or they're just complainers. Like, why? If you don't love what you do, just don't come to work, find another job.
Yes.
You know, seriously, like, just don't bring that energy. Don't be an energy vampire, man. Just please stay, you know.
I'm going to apply to intern with Coach Merchant. Like almost everything you've said, Alex will tell you, it so resonates with who I am as a human. I mean, I don't even interview people. I just meet before anyone is hired into the firm. All I ask is for the last 15 minutes before the hiring director presents an offer. And I just ask them about their family. And you can tell. That immediately tells me whether that person should join our family or not. And
it matters.
I'm just like, I say, like, look, I love my wife and my 2 beautiful children. I do not leave that house to come into the office to be just like someone's sacrificial lamb because something else is going on.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to bring a great attitude, great effort every single day. Everything we do in life is a team sport. I mean, if you think about it, team exists because there's something so great you can't do by yourself.
Right.
So it requires a collaborative, collegial effort.
Well, we always say to our players, we learn this from the military guys that come in here called the program. They're amazing. If anyone ever watches this, from they do corporate side and they do teams, and there's no greater ability to teach leadership and team cohesion to me than military armed forces guys.
I believe it.
These guys are bad, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Bad mold. I mean, these guys are Navy SEALs, these guys are Texas Rangers. I got sports in my hand. These guys are, Army Rangers. They're the best of the best. I mean, these guys are Green Berets. They are like, you sleep well at night when you meet these guys.
Because of them.
But they always say this, as a teammate, as a member of a unit, are you adding value and taking strain? Are you adding value to the team, and are you taking strain from others? And if you don't do those 2 things, you need to rethink yourself. Because even if you're injured, you can take strain. You can encourage someone. You can, help a coach. You could help with a scouting report. You could sit with a freshman and help them get through the plays. I mean, there's always something you can do. But their big thing is, if there's adversity, are you adding value and are you taking strain? And if you don't do that as a team member, those are the 2 things that they feel like you're a weak link.
Can we come back? I love that story. You heard it here, the program. Look into that. I love those 2 questions. Can we go back to work ethic quickly?
You got it.
You made a comment about work ethic, and it made me think of the difference between somebody who can work hard versus is a hard worker. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a distinct difference between somebody who's told, work hard right now, and so they show up and work hard right now, versus the other one who's doing work in the dark of night or on the weekends when no one else is watching.
Yep.
How can you measure that in today's environment? I mean, you're still winning the war for talent.
Yeah.
You're doing the program's doing well, bright future. How do you measure that now?
Well, that's well said. I mean, of course, everybody comes here to practice and works hard. We make them.
Right.
I mean, you go to your job and you're not going to let people sit on a couch and pop bonbons, and watch Netflix. You got to do your job. So as an administrator of a job or a CEO or a head coach, you make people work hard. But are they hard workers? I mean, that you just define success.
What great looks like.
Yeah.
Tell them what great looks like.
That's what great looks like. I mean, people that do it in the dark of night, 1,000, quiet mornings when no one's in the gym. It isn't posted on social media. But I think when I look at that, I also think of the word consistency, because that is sometimes what's missing in society to me now. Like, you got to do things when you don't want to do them. Not only do you have to be a hard worker and do more, but you got to be willing to show up all the time in the same way. The best players I've ever coached, the best people I've ever been around are the same human beings every day. They're not here one day, here the next. Oh, she's moody today. Oh, I got to lift her up. Like, that's exhausting. Are you adding value or taking strain? And it kind of fits in that category, and you define success in a perfect way, and you can see it. I mean, technology a little bit now shows us some of that. I just think what's done in the dark always comes in the light, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not doing it in the dark, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody can be a 3 o'clock All-American. Can you be a 7 o'clock All-American?
Mm-hmm.
Lights are on. There's 15,000 people. It's the game's on the line. You know, have you trained? And that's kind of the program when we talk, they always say, never rise up to the challenge, always fall back on your training.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just really fall back on your training. You should know that I can hit that shot because I've done it a million times when no one's been around, or I can get this stop or that rebound because I've done it and I've practiced and I've fallen back on my training. And I always love that message because I think so many kids want to get hyped up now for games.
Oh my gosh.
Drives me nuts. Or hyped up for a big meeting. Why aren't you hyped up for just to walk in the
Just
office
be
or be at practice? Like, just be the same. Be consistent as a person. And I think that's a real challenge now, you know, especially for Gen Zs, because they don't know who they are because of the social media has tried to define who they are, and what they look at and see they try to emulate, and it's morphed and it's messed up. And we could do a whole show on just how that's changed the minds of the youth.
Yes.
But I just think the consistency, to me, the kids that show up and are hard workers consistently make a difference.
I love that you said that consistency. I know we're running out of time, but I love that you said that. I've heard people reference like, why are you always at this level, or why are you always so intense? And I've never understood the person who says, oh, turn it on and off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, why shouldn't the standard be the standard on Monday at 7 a.m. and Saturday at 4 p.m.?
Yep.
Why is the day of the week or the time of the day or the audience influencing what we've set as a standard for who we are?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but it's getting harder and harder. And I think in your position, employing people is more difficult than it's ever been, you know, because also they're just, you know, they don't like it, they just leave. You know, they don't fight through. Like, we got to fight through some stuff, people. Like, it's okay to have a bad day. How you bounce back is what defines you, right? It's never the defeat. It's not getting up, you know. You fall down 10 times, you get up 11, you know. Like, come on, we got you. You're going to be all right, you know. But that consistency, I think, as a person is something I'm finding a little harder to find.
Yeah.
You know, not only in staff, but also in young people, you know. So you just try to do your best to, like, mission focused. Like, we can do all this distraction and worry about people's emotion, but like, every day from 2 to 4, it's about our mission. Yep. You know, we're going to go scrimmage Louisville as a Final Four team in 1 week from today. We're going to be exposed. So my job right now is to make sure that we have the least amount of exposures, right? That we're not blowing ourselves up. So I'm mission focused right now. Like, don't judge a leader for being, you know, putting the goal in front of your feelings, you know? And I think that sometimes that's a line that is gray now for younger people in particular. I think it's like, I don't not like you, but you're going to jump to the ball and you're going to call your coverage or we're going to run. It's not personal. I mean, I love them, but there's a standard. It's like you said, you shouldn't apologize for a standard, you know, and just take the emotions out and have that mission focused mentality.
Yeah. And that's, and as you know, Ben Newman's working with Coach Tucker and Coach Izzo this season. And Ben's been a lifelong friend of mine. He's always talked about the standard over the feeling. Yeah. It must be that way in order to win.
Well, Coach 18 to 22-year-old women, a lot of feelings.
For 27 years as a head coach. And
but thank
31.
God at Michigan State, there's a lot of technology, right? So we spew a lot of analytics and a lot of facts. Sure. Because it isn't about I don't feel like I don't want to play you. I'm not playing you because you're 4th on the depth chart in your player efficiency rating.
It's data.
It's just data. Yeah, here you go. Yeah. Which they love data because they're a younger generation that feeds off of like information. So I try to kind of change my delivery and just black and white it. Mission focused. These kids are playing, or this kid's playing more than you because of this, this, and this. Period.
Before we go, favorite Olympic memory?
Oh, from coaching?
Yes.
Well, gold medal for sure.
Yes.
I mean, you know.
But what happened in that moment? What happened in that season of your life that you were just like, this moment just blew me away, aside from what it was like to get the medal?
Well, I will say this. We had just, another interesting story, but we had just invaded Afghanistan before we, in the gold medal game. Like, I did the Pan Am, I've done it twice, right?
Yes.
So the first time I did it in 2009, we had 2 bodyguards over there for the USA team. Anywhere we went, practices, stuff like that, no big deal. We come out of one of our practices, we're like on day 4 there. There's a tank in front of our bus, a tank behind our bus, and there's like 15 guys with like AK whatevers, I don't know, machine guns.
Wow.
I mean, soldiers. And we're like, what's going on? They're like, the U.S. just invaded Afghanistan at the time. And so, you know, over there in particular in Serbia, we aren't always thought of anyways at a higher level because it's the bombings and things. So anyway, long story short, we're playing in the gold medal game against Serbia, and we're coming in and out of the tunnel, and people are like screaming at us, spitting on us, like how hated at that time we were. But when we stood up on the podium for the gold medal and they played our anthem, I've never been the same since. I've never been. And then working with the program and some of these guys and being around guys that don't have an arm or a leg and have had 53 surgeries and almost died twice and got off another round as their, like, you know, arm is being blown off, like, you know.
Yes.
No excuses.
Yes.
We got no excuses
Yes.
for anything that we do. Nothing you do today is hard compared to what's that. So when I look back on my favorite experience, I just love that we triumphed over some really challenging circumstances in a place that really, really didn't like us. And that was an eye-opener from a kid from Traverse City, you know, at the time. It was my first experience representing the USA basketball.
Thank you for sharing that story. I loved it. Last question for today, and we're going to have to do a 2.0 because I feel like I unpacked about a third of what I wanted to today. And I loved it, Coach Merchant, so I'm super thankful. What's on the bucket list?
As a human being?
Yeah.
I need to go to Greece. I need to go to Greece. I need to
Samantha,
go to
Samantha, I hope you're not listening to this. My wife is like, Greece.
Yeah, I know.
Spring break 2023.
Greece with, I love my children. Greece with no children. Can I add to the bucket list? I do everything for those 2 boys I got. You know, I love them to death, but I could use a
time in
mom-dad
Greece.
time. Yeah. That's a bucket lister right there.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Obviously, huge advocate of everything Michigan State since my family moved here in 2017. So blessed to be around the different programs here, to have time with you today. Folks, I mean, you literally heard, I think, easily one of the top 3 conversations I've had in a year and a half. Head coach of Michigan State women's basketball program, 15 plus years, 30 plus years coaching women's basketball. One of the top athletes coming out of Traverse City. And the high school was Traverse City Central High School, where she was a standout athlete in 3 sports. And yes, you heard Coach Suzy Merchant says she would have put on the pads and stepped out this past Saturday against those Badgers. Congrats to Coach Tucker in the win there too.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks
so
for
happy
being
for
with
him.
us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our guest, Suzy Merchant. You can follow Suzy on Instagram and Twitter at Suzy Merchant, and that's SUZY Merchant. If you like what you heard today, please be sure to follow, rate, and review at the Podium on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Podium_podcast. Post about the show on social media and tag us, and we'll repost to share our gratitude. Also, consider telling a friend about the show. Friend of friend is still the best way to get the word out about our conversations. I hope the episode provided a powerful reminder that you have the ability to win and to win big. With the right mindset, actions, and people in your corner, no adversity or opportunity is too great to surpass. And we'll see you next time.